Hello folks, welcome to my YouTube channel Watercolor Impressions. Since it's fall season in Toronto, the trees are bright and the whole city looks colorful, so I want to do a fall painting. Before you go, hit the subscribe button so you guys can get weekly video updates from our channel. And let's get started, guys. As always, I'll provide the drawing template and reference. Check my video description to download it so you guys can follow this tutorial with me. So when it comes to drawing, maybe if you watch my video, I say this every time in all my video, keeping it simple and making sure that it gives a map. So when I started this drawing, I did make a mistake, and because I arranged my street car on the car in a wrong position. So being said that, whenever you think you did something wrong, go and fix it. Because sometimes, as an artist, I get really lazy because once I put a mark, I don't like to go and change it because I try to go with the vision. If you think you can go and fix your drawing, so be it, go and fix it. And if you think it's going to make your painting look better, so be it. And the one thing I usually be aware of is the perspective in my drawing, because the perspective also shows depth and distance in your painting. And because every day people see things in distance, so you have to put shapes in such a way that it creates that perspective in your paintings. So you could see I moved things around from one side to another side, and I'm also putting a lot of details on this drawing because there's one thing. I've done a lot of complex painting. There's one thing I still struggle with is the trees, and trees are really hard to paint, but I'll make it really simple as possible and impressionistic as possible. So I'm also adding some figures. Figures are really important in any drawing because it shows the scale of the painting. And let's move on and throw down the first wash. So let's throw down our first wash. There's a little bit of green in my sky, so I'm going to add a little bit of warmth and green in my sky. And I did speed up the video 5 times faster, so I wish I can paint this fast, but I can't. So at the bottom of the sky in distance in the horizon, I just put some cool colors because in any traditional painting, if you see, the cool colors go in distance, the warmer colors come in the foreground. So in Toronto, there's 2 shades of roads. There's a tar road, there's a cement road. The cement road are where the streetcar goes. The transition is a little bit hard to paint, but I want to take it as a challenge, and I did it, and it also gives a little bit of realism in the roads. So before the sky dries out, I'm throwing down some leftover paint in my palette, and I'm going to keep on increasing the road. Even though it looks darker now, it's gonna get lighter, and you can see the washes look darker, and it's gonna get lighter. As watercolor has a tendency of getting lighter, so you have to go a little bit more stronger than what you think. So I'm just trying to make the road first because so we have a big foreground in the foreground, so I want to make sure that I want to spend some time in getting that right. So I'm trying to get the transition and putting some perspective lines. You can see as soon as we put the perspective lines, you can see there is some kind of leading going on in our painting. So there's a building which is in the midground. I'm trying to keep it really light as possible because I'm going to throw down another wash. So I'm going to start with distance first. For distance, I'm going to put some cool colors, and I pretend that it's not there. So whenever you paint a background, make sure that you don't spend so much time on it. If you see this painting from far, or if it's framed, and you could see the details in the background doesn't exist, you can't even see it. So when you paint background, so don't put that much time and paint as though you don't care about the background. So I'm painting the midground buildings. There is a little bit of a trick to painting buildings. Look for the bigger shape and think it's a cube or rectangular or it's a triangle. So when you think as a shape, it's easy to block that shape as fast as possible. Then you can add the details later. And you could see in my reference, the building was on the left hand side, but I moved it so it comes in the frame. but it will be covered in the trees, and before it dries out, I'm throwing down some colors on it so that it kind of blends and it gives this really, the buildings are in distance. So now let's focus on the tree which is on the mid-ground, and so this is the technique I'm going to use in all the trees. So first I'll put the light wash at the top, so there's going to be a lot of green, and it's a mid-ground value. I'm going to increase a little bit of burnt amber, a little bit of warmer color in it. At the bottom I'm going to increase the pigment consistency. So for that, and I take a tissue paper and I take off some of the edges at the top, so it gives the loose edge on the trees and it looks like trees. So now I'll jump on to I'll connect that shape to the building on the mid-ground. So let's paint some trees, and this is the technique I use for all the trees I use. So let's put the first base color. So the base color should be the color of the tree. I also changed the green tree to the red tree since it's a fall, so I thought it will be a nice color to our painting. So I put the first color, and before it dries out I put the darker color of it, so it kind of gives that there's a light and shadows. The same thing I'm going to do for the yellow tree as well. So I also connected that tree to the red tree, and I also sprayed some water. So the water helps to create this loose edges in the trees, and it gives this beautiful texture for watercolors. So it's the same thing for this one. I'm putting down the first wash of the yellow tree, and before it dries out I'll put the shadow of it, and I'm also splattering some of the paints on the top of it just to get some variation of edges. And I also spray some water after it, so it gives the texturing look in it. So you could see the mid-tone, I'm also spraying it as well, because it's really hard to keep on dabbing on it. Instead of dabbing, you can do this, just give that loose edges. So I'll connect my foreground tree with the mid-ground tree. There's a darker tree and there's also a darker shadow. That also helps us to frame the foreground tree as well. And you could see I also combine the tree to the midground and the background trees. So there is one thing in every painting I do, I put streetcars, because the streetcar provides a scale, and there is nothing shows that it's Toronto than the streetcar. So sometimes whenever I do uninteresting subjects, as soon as I put the streetcar, and the subject looks interesting. So the streetcar also helps us to create a really good midground element in our painting as well. So there is something in every painting should have, is the distance background, and with the less amount of details, and the midground, which also shows some interesting things happening in the midground, and the foreground, which helps us to lead into the painting and what shows what the painting is about. So since I have some little bit of paint in my brush, so I'm adding that mid value in my buildings as well. So I'm also doing this with the least amount of brush stroke. There is one thing in every painting when you paint is showing how confident in your strokes. This is the thing I learned, and the more confident your stroke is, and the more freshness your painting gonna look like. So this is the tree branches, and as you can see in the reference, it's also there. But I'm also trying to leave some gaps here and there, and it shows that there is some kind of leaves at the front and some at the back. And this also need to be done with a little bit of careful, because I tend to cover everything and just have the branches peeking out more. But you can check the reference and you can do it accordingly. And I also make it as less as possible, because I also simplify it in a way that it looks good and with a less amount of brush strokes. So only few things left in our painting. We are almost at the end of our painting. So I'm just adding the shadows for the streetcar and for the car. As soon as I added that, you could see there's a light happening in our painting. And there's also a darker tone in the streetcar, because there is no light inside the streetcar, so that gives the impression of reflection, as well as there is a depth in the streetcar as well. So I'm also what I'm going to trying to do is I'm adding the other details as well. I also added a couple of figures in the drawing with least amount of brush strokes. And now it's a matter of taking the white paint and bringing some of the highlights which I forget to left it. Sometimes it's really hard to plan your painting and leaving all the white bits, but sometimes you can use take white paint to bring some of the highlights. And I'm also bringing some of the highlights and everything back, and you can see as soon as we put the lights on the streetcar and everything came alive, and the foreground become weak now, so I want to add a little bit of like a value on it so that it kind of gives a really good lead in for us. That's the only reason I added. So this is the final stage of any painting I do. What I'm talking about is the details for the telephone wires, the light wires, the light post, and everything. So these are the things, the directional lines which I'm putting on the everything. It gives it gives a perspective lines, as well as it also gives a lead in. And as you can see, once I put the road lines, it also gives the lead in and the perspective lines in distance. And when you do it, and don't be careful. If you're careful, you're gonna mess things a lot. So I try to be not to be careful when I do those lines. So every painting I do, and I want to see how my painting gonna look like. So I usually take the tape off, and let's see how the painting looks like. And it did came out pretty good. So now it's your turn. Take my drawing template and reference, and let's see what you can come up with. Thanks again for watching this fall painting video tutorial with me. Let me know what you guys think about this video in the comment section. If you want me to cover any other subjects in watercolors, write me at watercolorimpressions@gmail.com or comment below. Before you go, hit the subscribe button so you guys can get weekly video updates from our channel. And good luck with your painting, folks.